Captain Elia's core squinted at the jumble of asteroids spinning lazily around the forgotten sector of the Epsilon V7 cluster, muttering under his breath about the cosmic misfortune of being assigned patrol duty in a place where nothing ever happened, except for the occasional space debris collision that gave the radar system panic attacks. He leaned back in the pilot chair of the Iron Wren, a ship that looked as though it had been patched together from 3 different eras of human starcraft engineering, and sighed, tossing a half-melted protein bar into the air and catching it in his mouth with the precision that came from years of dodging actual bullets instead of bureaucratic memos. I swear, if I have to listen to another log of Captain Riley reminding me to maintain vigilance in the asteroid belt, I'm going to start sending her messages in interpretive dance. The radar pinged faintly, more of a cough than an alarm, and Elias tilted his head, squinting at the holographic display that flickered uncertainly in the dim light of the cockpit. "Well, hello there, tiny blip," he said, leaning forward. "You're not supposed to exist." The signal repeated, weak but persistent, a stutter of distress buried under the chaos of spinning rocks. He adjusted the ship's trajectory with a grunt and a muttered curse at the thrusters, glancing at the navigation AI with what he assumed was a look of mild suspicion. "All right, Circuit, let's see if we can find your owner before she spontaneously combusts from cosmic exposure. Don't let me die embarrassed." As he maneuvered through the debris field, dodging asteroids that looked as though they had been launched by a particularly bored supernova, the ship's sensors resolved the source. A small, almost human figure slumped against the jagged edge of a rock formation. Elias blinked and muttered, "Well, I'll be damned. That's either a very badly disguised mannequin or someone's about to make my day interesting." The figure stirred slightly, revealing a face that could have passed for human if not for the long, elegant ears curling upward from her head like antennae. They twitched ever so slightly, scanning him as if measuring his soul or judging his taste in starship interior design. Hi," Elias said, rubbing the back of his neck, suddenly aware that human small talk seemed entirely inadequate in first contact situations. "Captain Elias Core. I don't usually rescue princesses or people with fancy ears, but today's been a slow shift." The figure's eyes, bright and calculating, flickered over him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. She didn't speak at first, just tilted her head and let a faint sigh escape, a sigh that, if humans could make sighs glow, would have illuminated the cockpit in neon embarrassment. Elias fumbled with the communication mic, then shrugged. "No need to thank me yet. You haven't even decided if I'm the friendly kind of human or the kind that makes bad puns while dragging you across the galaxy." The princess finally spoke, her voice a melodic cadence that carried an undertone of dry humor despite the obvious strain of pain. "Your reputation precedes you, Captain. Unfortunately, it seems incomplete." Elias blinked. "Incomplete, huh? Not bad. I've been working on the incomplete part my whole career. Usually the yelling part is perfect, though." She didn't smile, but her ears twitched in a way that Elias decided counted as amusement, which he immediately bragged about to no one in particular. "Yes, humor. They teach that in officer training somewhere, probably in the chapter about panicking less than the people who make the decisions." He activated the ship's grappling system, threading a magnetic tether around her suit. As the thrusters hummed and groaned, he pulled her gently into the cargo hold, cursing softly as her long ears knocked over a stack of medkits. Okay, I see how it is. You and the medkits have a thing going on," he said, watching her ears flex with mild indignation. She muttered something in her language, which the universal translator rendered as a string of polite expletives that made Elias snicker. Yes, I understand. I'm an idiot. But look at the bright side. You're inside, you're not floating forever, and I didn't call you a space mannequin again. Progress. Once she was secured on a bio-bed, he rummaged through the medical supplies, muttering about the inherent difficulty of alien medicine. "All right, so your blood chemistry is basically a jigsaw puzzle wrapped in a Rubik's Cube with a side of mildly poisonous jelly." She raised an eyebrow and tapped the table lightly, as if to say, "I dare you to try." Elias grinned, unflappable. "Challenge accepted. I may be a human soldier, but I also majored in improvisation and guessing wrong less than 50% of the time." He adjusted the nutrient injectors, accidentally sending a mild tingle through her system, which caused her ears to glow a soft, embarrassed purple. Ah, he said, gesturing to the glow, color-coded emotions. That's adorable, actually. Very practical for battlefield diplomacy. You humans could take a lesson. She muttered again, and Elias swore he caught a faint smirk in her expression. As the iron wren limped away from the asteroid belt, sensors pinging intermittently from nearby gravitational anomalies, Elias tried to lighten the mood. So, Princess, do all Virelians glow when startled, or is this just your I may die if I trust this human setting? She flicked her ears, which twitched with something that might have been amusement, and replied, mostly the latter. You are unexpectedly humorous for a soldier. Elias sat back, satisfied, and tossed the melted protein bar across the cabin, catching it with his mouth again. Thank you, I do try. It's my version of interstellar charm. Minutes stretched into hours as the ship navigated the quiet void, the two of them sharing awkward commentary on the absurdities of life, war, and bureaucracy across planets. Elias recounted his encounters with malfunctioning AI, and the princess recounted narrow escapes from political assassination attempts with a wry edge that made the edges of her ears twitch like laughter. Despite the tension of the unknown enemies tracking them, each small joke, each awkward gesture seemed to knit trust between them. Elias adjusted the ship's shields and muttered, you know, between asteroid belts, bounty hunters, and life-threatening injuries, this is probably the weirdest first rescue story ever. And I love it. She tilted her head, the faintest trace of a smile brushing her lips, and Elias decided that, for all the danger and chaos, this was exactly the kind of trouble he thrived on. The chapter ended with a sudden alert. A distant fleet signature flickered on the radar, moving faster than any human vessel should. Elias swore under his breath, nudged the controls, and quipped, well, Princess, looks like our vacation in the quiet sector is over. Buckle up, I promise my jokes get better under fire. Her ears flicked in response, and Elias, glancing at her, realized that despite the growing peril, despite the unfamiliar alien physiology and the long, twitching ears, he wasn't entirely scared. Not yet, not with her there. Elias wiped the sweat from his brow, though the cockpit wasn't warm. It was the kind of cold that made the metal floorboards creak in a sympathetic groan. He glanced at the glowing ears of the alien princess as she lay secured on the bio-bed, and he couldn't resist a remark. You know, I've dealt with hostile starships, collapsing bridges in zero gravity, and malfunctioning gravity boots, but I've never had to dodge a fleet while babysitting ears that glow like a holiday decoration. She flicked one ear in his direction, slow and deliberate, which he interpreted as either amusement or a very polite threat. Yes, yes, he said quickly. I promise not to touch them. Your ears, not the fleet, they seem very sensitive. The sensors beeped again, warning of an approaching reconnaissance ship. Elias squinted at the holographic display and muttered, great. A little welcome party to make our Tuesday more interesting. Liara the princess sat up slightly with a twitch of her ears. Reconnaissance ships, she said in the melodious yet pointed tone that made her words feel like both warning and jest, are rarely polite. They prefer surprise inspections. Elias tilted his head. Polite inspections? Does anyone in this galaxy actually know what that means? She let out a faint, dry chuckle. Elias grinned, feeling the rare thrill of humor shared across species. Perfect. I'm getting paid in giggles today, worth it. As Elias recalibrated the ship's shields to account for the incoming scan, he fumbled with a handheld device designed to stabilize Liara's physiology. All right, he said, I may have zero clue what half of this does, but if it involves keeping you alive, I consider it my job, second only to avoiding cosmic humiliation. Liara, her eyes rolling just slightly, allowed a smirk to tug at the corners of her lips. Your confidence is entertaining, Captain, dangerous but entertaining. Elias held up a hand defensively. Hey, I call it professional hazard management with style. As the recon ship approached, the Iron Wren's sensors identified it as a lightly armed scout, sleek and silver, moving like it had been designed to hum in the vacuum of space. Elias muttered, sleek, fast, probably has an overinflated sense of superiority. Check, 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 sounds like my last dating experience in orbit. Liara's ears twitched sharply. Do humans have a habit of meeting danger with humor? Elias grinned. Depends. Some of us have terrible coping mechanisms, some of us make it look charming. She leaned back, visibly shaking her head, but the hint of amusement remained. Elias engaged the Iron Wren's stealth field, activating the adaptive camouflage panels that turned the ship into a distorted shimmer against the background of stars. You know, he said aloud, mostly to keep his own nerves busy, this is where it'd be nice if you had a manual. How to fly like a phantom in 3 easy lessons. Unfortunately, all I have is hope and stubbornness. Liara raised her head slightly. Hope is universal, she said carefully, her glowing ears dimming to a pale lavender, signaling what Elias hoped was calm rather than panic. Stubbornness, however, varies, he snorted. Oh, I've got that covered, multi-generational stubbornness encoded in my DNA. It's why humans keep surviving even when we probably shouldn't. She tilted her head, a flicker of a smile forming. Hours passed with the stealth field holding and the scout's sensors failing to detect them. In the cramped cabin, Elias rummaged through supplies and muttered about the absurdity of alien medical technology. Seriously, who designed a nutrient injector that glows, vibrates, and threatens to sprout wings if you push the wrong button? Very considerate of you, Virlia. Liara's ears twitched sharply and she let out a soft, dry laugh. You exaggerate, it only sprouts wings metaphorically. Elias tapped his forehead. Metaphorical wings, got it, very reassuring in the middle of a potential firefight. The tension eased and they began to talk more, sharing stories of ridiculous near disasters from their respective worlds. Elias described the time a gravity storm caused his squad's boots to stick upside down to the ceiling of a station corridor, and how he had to argue with a very annoyed colonel about whether floor was a relative concept in zero gravity. Liara countered with tales of her palace's ceremonial malfunctioning, where floating diplomats collided in zero-G orbits during an interplanetary meeting, resulting in a spectacle that nearly caused a galactic incident. Elias laughed, almost spilling a nutrient vial, and said, You know, I always assumed politics were dry. Turns out they're just aerodynamic. Liara's ears twitched again, subtle but unmistakable. Humor, apparently, was universal. As night fell on the far side of a distant gas giant, the two of them shared a quiet moment, the hum of the ship's systems filling the space between words. Elias adjusted a monitor displaying life support stats. Your heart rate's dropping, your nutrient absorption stabilizing, basically, you're on track to make it through this without me having to improvise a cosmic CPR dance. Liara's ears flicked. I find your commentary comforting for a human. Elias shrugged. I aim to please, also I'm trying to distract you from the fact that the galaxy wants to kill us both. Subtle approach works every time. Suddenly, a sensor ping indicated movement on the ship's aft side, a small craft attempting to dock unnoticed. Elias cursed under his breath. Of course, just when we were bonding, some jerk decides to RSVP to the party uninvited. Liara sat up, ears twitching sharply. I can assist, she said, her tone calm, commanding. Elias raised an eyebrow. Assist, huh? Do you mean like a polite hold their attention while I crash them into a moon kind of assist or actual combat assist? She smirked faintly. The polite variety. Elias laughed. I love polite variety, best kind works every time. Using her knowledge of alien tech, Liara activated a subtle countermeasure embedded in her suit, creating a minor gravitational distortion that caused the small intruding ship to drift harmlessly into a nebula cloud, spinning in confusion. Elias shook his head, grinning. Of course, Princess, you're basically a walking cheat code. This explains a lot about your political life, I bet. She raised an eyebrow. You have no idea. Elias leaned back in his chair. I'm okay with that. Mystery keeps things interesting, also keeps me employed. By the time the immediate threat had drifted away, the two of them had formed an unusual rhythm. Elias handled the piloting and occasional human stupidity, while Liara contributed precise interventions, often with a joke or sarcastic comment that eased the stress. They shared more stories of interstellar absurdities, and Elias even found himself smiling at the thought that, for all her alien physiology and twitching ears, she might just be the best company he'd ever had in a galaxy full of chaos. As the Iron Wren glided silently through the empty void, Elias reclined and said aloud, You know, Princess, I think we might survive this. Maybe, but if we don't, at least I'll have a funny story about glowing ears and sarcastic alien royalty. Liara's ears flicked once slowly, almost imperceptibly, and she replied, And I will have a story about human resilience, incompetence, and humor. It is tolerable. Elias grinned. Tolerable, I'll take that as a win. The chapter ended with the distant shimmer of a hidden fleet on the radar, moving faster than either of them could fully track, and Elias muttered, "Oh, good. Looks like tomorrow's going to be even more fun. Hope you're caffeinated, princess." Her ears twitched once in acknowledgement, and Elias realized that despite the danger, despite the unknown threats closing in, he had found a rare thing in the void. A companion whose humor and courage matched his own, even if she glowed when annoyed. Elias tightened his grip on the controls of the Iron Wren, eyes flicking between the radar and the distant shimmer of the pursuing fleet. His shoulders ached from hours of evasive maneuvers, but he refused to admit fatigue aloud. Not when the alien princess's ears twitched in anticipation beside him, glowing faintly in rhythm with the ship's heartbeat. "All right, Princess Liara," he muttered. "Time to make the galaxy remember why humans shouldn't be underestimated. And also why sarcasm is a survival skill." She raised an eyebrow, tilting her head ever so slightly. "You think words can stop missiles?" Elias smirked. "Not really. But if I can annoy them first, it counts as a tactical advantage." The fleet was fast, sleek, and merciless, comprised of a dozen scout ships with offensive capabilities far beyond the Iron Wren's standard armaments. Elias wove through an asteroid belt, laughing to himself as Liara muttered commentary in her melodic accent. "Your piloting is reckless." "Thank you," Elias replied with mock gratitude. "I pride myself on combining danger with style." Her ears twitched sharply, a subtle glow reflecting irritation or perhaps amusement. It was hard to tell, but Elias took it as a good sign. He engaged the ship's cloaking system, but one of the scouts adapted faster than expected, slicing through the illusion with a pulse of electromagnetic interference. "Of course," Elias muttered, "because why would anyone ever play fair?" Liara's hand brushed against a console and a ripple of alien energy coursed through the ship's systems. "Try not to overheat the reactor, human," she teased. Elias grinned. "Oh, don't worry. I only like to flirt with disaster, not actually kiss it." The first exchange of fire was chaotic, yet oddly humorous. Missiles streaked past, only to be deflected by Liara's precise manipulations of the ship's graviton shields. She leaned back, one ear twitching as she remarked dryly, "You humans always aim for drama." Elias laughed, narrowly evading another volley. "Dramatic flair is what keeps life interesting. Without it, we'd just be floating boxes in the dark. And honestly, that's depressing." Liara's ears flicked once, acknowledging his humor, and Elias felt a rare warmth, not just from adrenaline but from the quiet connection they had nurtured. Hours blurred into a tense dance of maneuvers, jokes, and minor catastrophes narrowly avoided. At one point, Elias miscalculated a gravity well, sending them spinning end over end, and Liara's ears glowed a bright purple in protest. "I told you the human sense of balance was unpredictable," she said, voice tinged with restrained laughter. Elias groaned dramatically, tossing a control panel toggle in her direction. "I prefer the term creative navigation." She flicked the toggle back with her telekinetic ability, and Elias couldn't help but laugh. "See, teamwork." Finally, after a tense chase that spanned the rim of several star systems, they reached a neutral space station, a sprawling structure floating lazily in orbit around a serene blue planet. Elias guided the Iron Wren through the docking bay, muttering complaints about station protocols and poorly labeled docking procedures. Liara, despite her injuries, assisted in subtle ways, guiding the ship with gestures that minimized friction and avoided detection. "You are more competent than I anticipated," she said, ears flicking slightly. Elias chuckled. "Thanks, I try, but you," he gestured at her, the real reason we didn't end up as cosmic wreckage." Inside the station, they found refuge in a secure medbay, where Elias continued to tend to Liara's injuries. She finally allowed herself to relax, her shoulders easing, ears glowing softly in a color he interpreted as contentment. "You humans," she said, voice warm, "are more persistent than I expected. I assumed I would be captured or worse." Elias grinned, holding up a hand. "Persistence, charm, bad jokes, it's a package deal." She tilted her head, eyes glinting with the faintest smile. "Perhaps the galaxy is not so hostile when one finds unexpected allies." Over the following days, the two of them shared quiet moments that were punctuated by humor, gentle teasing, and mutual respect. Elias discovered that bravery wasn't always about gunfire and evasive maneuvers. It was about patience, trust, and listening to someone who had lived a very different life from his own. Liara realized that humans, despite their chaos and impulsiveness, could offer loyalty and resilience in ways her own people often underestimated. Their bond deepened, no longer just survivor and rescued, but two beings bridging the gap between worlds. Eventually, the station authorities allowed them to send a discreet communication to Liara's home planet, signaling her safety and the thwarting of the pursuing fleet. Elias had grown, too. The routine patrols he had once found monotonous now held potential for adventure, responsibility, and companionship. Humor remained his shield and anchor, but beneath it, he discovered a deeper courage, tempered by care and empathy. As they prepared to depart the station, Liara looked at him, ears glowing softly in what he interpreted as gratitude and something more tender. "Captain Elias Kor," she said, "perhaps your persistence and humor are not without merit." Elias smirked, running a hand over the controls. "Well, Princess, I do aim to impress, and apparently I'm halfway there." She allowed herself a faint laugh, and he realized it was the first genuine, unguarded sound she had made since he found her among the asteroids. The Iron Wren launched back into the void, but this time not just in escape or pursuit. They moved together, a team forged through danger, wit, and shared vulnerability. Elias felt the weight of responsibility differently now, less as a duty, more as a promise. Liara, beside him, had changed too. She trusted a human in a way that had once seemed impossible, and in doing so had opened herself to the unexpected warmth of companionship, and perhaps the beginnings of love. As distant stars streaked past the viewport, Elias quipped, "You know, Princess, the galaxy may be big, full of enemies and bureaucracy, but I think I finally found the part I like the best." Liara's ears twitched, a subtle glow lighting her features. "And what part would that be?" she asked, voice light with amusement. Elias' grin was slow, genuine, and unguarded. "This part right here. Us, alive, kicking, and still capable of bad jokes." She allowed herself to smile fully, and for the first time, Elias understood that some journeys were not about the destination, but about the companions who made the stars feel less empty. They drifted together through the quiet expanse, no longer soldier and princess, but two beings who had weathered the chaos of the cosmos and emerged